Gielinor holds many secrets, many treasures, many inaccessible areas that we can simply gaze at. Something as simple as this ritual site, or even something as bold as the black void that fills out Menaphos. But in today's video, we're looking at something off the mainland, so get your sea legs on and join me as we find out about the hidden isles of Gielinor. Standing on the easternmost part of the swampy lands of Mauritania, you'll look over the horizon and wonder, what's out there? What monsters? What adventures? What new XP rates can we discover for Slayer? Little is known about the eastern lands in Old School, with only dribs and drabs of information laying before us. Though it's more fleshed out in RuneScape 3, we can still assemble some kind of idea of what to expect. I mean, let's be honest. With sailing coming into play sometime in the future, I'd be heavily surprised if we didn't get to sail east. The Wushanko Isles can be described at its most basic level as an archipelago east of Mauritania, though if you were to stand there and try and see them in the distance, all you'll find is a black void staring back at you. Anyway, as I mentioned before, little is known about the Isles and all the information is very inconclusive. Only a handful of characters acknowledge or mention the Isles, but from these interactions it's suggestive that the culture and architecture is based on medieval Asia, more often than not, Japan. Looking at RuneScape 3 for more insight, which I'll signify with this little RuneScape 3 icon in the corner, we're provided with a map that details certain regions of the archipelago, and going left to right, we have the Ark, the Skull, the Hook, the Scythe, the Bowl, the Pincers, the Loop, and the Shield. Unlike traditional kingdoms found in Western Gielinor, individual islands or small groups of islands are ruled by Khans, providing local stability, but the fact that there are so many Khans can lead to small-scale conflict, with political feuds and small battles over territory, though they have allegedly been known to come together to combat larger threats. Through this leadership system, they developed a democratic capital of the Isles on Kanoka, and it's said that each region develops different resources, and so trade amongst each other to ensure the survival of their communities is necessary. Though even trading with each other is a dangerous endeavour, as the seas are known to be dangerous. Many sea monsters, such as the Kami, live in the region and attack any and all ships, though as the story goes in RuneScape 3, a sea singer named Quinn had found the Elder Horn and used it to control the sea monsters, making the seas completely inaccessible. Though that does change due to a series of events involving murder. I mean, even in RuneScape 3, the only accessible region is the Ark, with the only accessible islands being Anniversary Island, the faraway place where things are kept, and Kamishima. And I should mention that there is a player-owned port as well, which would be quite cool to see in OSRS. But speaking of OSRS, the scenario of Quinn and her sea blockade is an impossibility in old school RuneScape, as from the ending of Desert Treasure 2, spoiler warning, Sliske is in possession of the Elder Horn after our failed attempt of defeating him, so potentially the sea won't be as dangerous for us to enter the Eastern Isles, as far as we're concerned. According to the mysterious old man, the Eastern lands are famed for their complex toys and puzzles, and it's where the strange box originated from. The strange box was formerly an item received during a random event and provided a new puzzle for you to solve, and you'd receive a small prize for solving it, so nothing new there. But it was removed with the release of optional random events in 2014. Unsurprisingly, being the most eastern port on mainland Gielinor does mean that the ghosts of Port Phasmatis once upon a time did trade with the eastern lands. This has changed, however, due to Necrovarus' little stunt of killing everyone and turning them into ghosts. But there is some speculation that Necrovarus himself is from the Isles. Acheron is a trader found on the docks of the port and can be seen wielding a katana. They may have got it from an elite clue scroll, but who knows. The old crone also suggests that the Eastern lands have a different writing system, as she says that she cannot read the strange letters of the Eastern lands, which is close to real-life Western-Eastern culture divides. The Nightmare of Ashihama and Shura also hail from the Eastern lands, namely from the region named the Pincers. It's said that a ritual was performed by several shamans that birthed an otherworldly horror that took the appearance of a large, hag-like woman. And for as long as the sirens of Ashihama can remember, the nightmare had plagued them, with their dreams being stolen and feasted upon. Though the shamans attempted to undo their mistake by creating 4 totems, they were wiped out before they could actually use them, which led to one brave siren, named Shura, to venture into the cave and recover the 4 totems. Thankfully, she was successful, and the sirens used these totems to drive the nightmare from their islands. And the nightmare did flee, but unfortunately, it fled west, arriving to the small town of Sleep, which was, in a very unfortunate turn of luck, at the height of a sleeping plague from its vampire overlords. The nightmare could feast to no end, and rapidly kept growing in power until Shura, who had left the islands to try and kill the threat once and for all, had contained it within the Sisterhood Sanctuary. The majority of the Warriors Guild members are thought of as being from the Eastern Lands as well. It's said that the Cyclops on the top floor of the Warriors Guild are from the far Eastlands, which implies that Haralik or Camfrina brought the monsters with them from the east. There's also Shinomi, a battle mage who created the magical animators and is in charge of the animated armour in the guild. And there's also the presence of Camfrina and her Zen dialogue, and the apprentice Lorelei and her katana. And to finish this section off, it'd be wrong of me to not mention the fact that we have been to the Eastern Islands, at least a small part of it, using the sailing skill. And no, I'm not an oracle having visions of the future, though that would be cool. Instead, I'm talking about the 2014 April Fool's event. This was, of course, when it was announced that the sailing skill would be released, allowing you to travel to the Eastern Lands by speaking to Captain MMG south of Draenor Village. Though the exciting promise of visiting the Eastern Lands most likely crashed hard, as it turned out that it was part of the Water Altar area, but I guess that's still exotic. You did get to see some NPCs though. The Wise Old Man, the Sandwich Lady, a Troll, Acheron, Saba, a Lizard Man, Party Pete, and even Zaros. So I guess he never left? But that's all we can say on the Wushanko Isles so far. That's all we know. But hey, with the port gates of the ocean ready to open soon, who knows what we can discover. The good thing about the absence of fact is that our minds can run wild with fiction, thinking of what could be out there. We certainly don't know 100% what the Eastern Isles could look like, let alone what horrors would await us there, or what treasures are waiting to be plundered. But there are those with brilliant minds and skills that, just like the cartographers of old, map out the oceans and try to piece together what they can. Before I continue, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Ninjapig for allowing me to utilise not only this special map that they've made, but to also quote them on the following lore they came up with to accompany the region. The first thing you'll notice is that this OSRS interpretation of the Wushanko Isles looks very different to the usual map that we've seen, and that's because, as Ninjapig said, they've always imagined that the Eastern Lands should stretch along the entire eastern side of the globe, and not quite in a small strip simply going east. We'll cover a few of these areas that they've made, namely Orthan, Torshia, Walesmoor, Cyclosis, and the Shadow Reef. When the Dragonkin came to Gielinor, they established several structures in the Wushanko Isles. The Dragonkin capital city of Orthan is actually a drowned city north of Waiko. The city was prosperous until a Dragonkin attempted to poison Gielinor's anima, leading to Jas to enslave their race. The Dragonkin split into 4 factions and departed the city of Orthan, believing it to be forever cursed. And after the arrival of the Dragonkin, but before the first stage, the Moanu settled on Gielinor. These are the ancestors of the cave and jungle horrors we see today. An eldritch entity known as Zautak brought them to Gielinor and they settled a great number of islands in its name. The Moanu settled Orthan, renamed it and converted it into a city of Blackstone. Torshia is the name of the Wushankan protector god and also an island. As the stories go, Torshia was a colossi, a normal animal given incredible power from the power radiating off of elder artifacts. In the present day, the island of Torshia is said to be her final resting place. Whether Torshia is alive, asleep, or simply a myth is disputed by the residents of the Wushanko Isles. People who believe her to be asleep think Guthix allowed her to remain on Gielinor after the edicts, as she was the only god from the God Wars to be a native to Gielinor. Regardless, followers of Zautak have planted a large black stone obelisk onto the centre of the island. Once the largest volcano on Gielinor, this atoll is now home to magical fish and reefs. The magic fish eventually coalesced into a spirit of the sea known as Temporos. The local fishermen worked together to rid the island of Temporos, but its presence left a permanent storm, the Droning Deep. Those fishermen established the Spirit Anglers, and proceeded to follow Temporos wherever it went. The island of Waiko is now home to various fishermen, pirates, and spirit anglers. Ninjapig imagined this island to have a strong code of loyalty between pirates and fishermen, where no violence or combat is tolerated at Port Fishbone, and some Wanu ruins are scattered on the northeastern side of the island. Cyclosis is the homeland of the Cyclops and various dragonkin abominations. Originally an uninhabitable frostbitten land, after the conclusion of the God Wars, the lands began to thaw. The Cyclops, ashamed of their participation in Bandos' army, discovered the island as an escape and moved there. They wanted to isolate themselves to prevent their race from ever causing further bloodshed in some god's name. In the present day, Cyclosis is closed off to outsiders. You'll have to earn the respect of other Wushanko Isles before accessing Cyclosis. The island is thought to have a Greek aesthetic, as that's the mythological origin of the Cyclops. Several species of dryad can also be found on the island. The dragonkin established several structures on Cyclosis. Experiments were conducted by combining blackstone with various creatures, such as dryads, hydras, and dragons. Now if you know dragonkin lore, you may think to yourself, hydras? But they're from Mount Karul. And you would be correct, Ninjapig had thought of this as well. They explained that Gielinor is a globe, so geographically speaking, Cyclosis could potentially be quite close to Mount Karul. You would just have to sail east over the border of the map and arrive on the west coast of Zaya. The dragonkin on the mountain had sent some hydras to their colleagues in the Wushanko Isles as proof of their success. This is all because a Greek-themed island without a hydra would feel weird, in their opinion. As for the dryads, 3 were implanted with blackstone, which became the Furies, important beings from Greek myth. There's also a couple of interesting smaller islands surrounding Cyclosis, such as a Fremenic outpost to the west, a penguin stronghold, and a dispute between some seals and polar bears. The Shadow Reef is a location from RuneScape 3, and it contains Ulthaven Creeth, which is an underwater sunken temple, once built and inhabited by dragonkin, though not much is entirely known. The presence of Zhao Tak and his minions is very clear, with blackstone lining every single part of this area. And once again, I just want to say thank you to Ninjapig for allowing me to use this material, and now that we have the Wushanko Isles explained and depicted by an incredibly detailed map, let's move somewhere a bit more colder. Leaving the exotic archipelago behind and venturing north of mainland Gielinor, you'll come across the Fremenic province, which contains Relica and the surrounding areas, Miscellanea, the island next to it, Natsonot, Jatizo, and Waterbearfile. Sailing a bit more north, you'll find Ungale, the Isle of Stone, and the Iceberg, and sure enough, that's as far as we can go. But that doesn't necessarily mean that further beyond the frozen sea lies an empty body of water. No. A landmass known as Acheron exists, mentioned by heroes and travellers, as well as written in books that this landmass is consistently described as being a frozen wasteland. Chief Brunt even describes it as a terribly vicious place that is so cold that it should be impossible to comfortably live. Yet there are things that roam against impossible odds. He describes stories that tell of icy winds, cold and malicious enough to wrap themselves around your heart and freeze it to stone. Doesn't sound too inviting, but hey, that doesn't mean that things don't live or exist there. In fact, Acheron is where the original home of the Imkando dwarves was, Imkandoria. And we know Imkandoria was in Acheron mainly due to a ghost in the ruins of Camdozal, stating how the Imkando once lived in a great city in the far north. The tale of Imkandoria is known by many, especially since the release of Desert Treasure 2. Towards the end of the Second Age, an Imkando acolyte discovered a strange black idol with odd scratched markings along the beach on the Isles of Garma. That was where it all began to go wrong. Storms and natural disasters slowly began to happen around Imkandoria, which got so bad they had to go into hiding. They took up refuge with the giants who guarded the Forge of Giants for roughly 5 months, before attempting to visit Imkandoria once more, trading with the Orspa tribes that lived around the now desolate city. Venturing inside, they found their once glorious city turned into a mass graveyard, piles of bones, pools of blood, with a gigantic grotesque mass with 3 bulbous eyes nesting in the centre, and the elders of Imkandoria chanting incantations of an unknown language around this creature. If you watch the video on Zhao Tak, you may be familiar with this strange entity, but it's clear that the elders had been corrupted. It was then that the expedition that ventured inside was attacked, so they fled, but not before setting fire to the temple and fleeing for their lives. Numbers dwindled and the storms becoming less frequent. They inscribed the events that had transpired onto a heavy tome to warn others not to travel into Imcandoria. The Imcando would then move on, sailing south to fight for Saradomin. Just as a quick side note, if you're enjoying the video, please do consider subscribing and liking the video. It would help out the channel a lot. The only other area that we can really talk about in regards to Acheron is Palingrad, the infamous penguin motherland where there's only one singular mention in the entire game. In the Cold War quest where it's stated our people live in the great city of Palingrad, of course. Nothing else is really known about Palingrad aside from their leader, the Pascalian, who has condemned the KGP to complete research on the southern species, essentially the mainland, before being allowed to return. And the specialty dish is cod, but that's it, nothing else. So aside from these two areas, there's nothing else concrete in the game about Acheron, or what it could entail. But who knows what horrors and treasure await us there. It's said that Chief Brunt, once the Dagannoth threat has been dealt with, is considering to mount an expedition up there. Just like the heron that recently came into my care while I was fishing infernal eels, we'll soon be able to soar across the open seas, although we'll be on the water. This will truly allow us to be more free than we could have ever imagined, kind of like when you had to visit all those little islands on Assassin's Creed Black Flag to get a completionist run. As more and more information is released about this skill, we're getting a better idea of what to expect, and for this video, it makes sense to look at the range of exploration that we'll be able to expect. While I don't expect to see any of the Wushanko Isles or Acheron anytime soon, sailing is essentially the bridge that would be able to start introducing that aspect of the world to us as we sail across Gielinor. It makes sense that a lot of the islands we'll encounter will be barren, save for some foliage or maybe a crab or two. But that doesn't mean that we can't disembark and take a rest on these islands. We'll be venturing out into shallow, open and deep seas, all with unique islands and treasures for us to find. One such island that mentioned is the Great Conch, where a turtle tribe named the Tortugans make their home. Being able to sail out and interact with new civilizations and factions will not only bring more stories to the forefront, but it absolutely has the ability to drop information about what lies further beyond. Wushanko and Acheron are just a blank canvas, for the most part, ready to be painted on. Zautak especially. I'm excited to see what sailing brings, and what the future holds for us intrepid adventurers. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the video. With the release of Valamor just round the corner, I imagine I'll be super busy with adding new video ideas into the schedule, so I'm very excited for the expansion. If you guys want me to cover anything specific, then let me know. This video was inspired by Retsky, who commented on the last video I made, and he suggested that I look at the Eastern Isles, so here we are. You should definitely check that video out, by the way. But anyway, thanks for watching, and see you next time.